大家好. My name is Gavin Scott and I am from Gate English Training School. Today's video is going to be the first in a new course on writing for IELTS. For those of you that don't know me, I used to be an IELTS examiner and I've been teaching English since 2004. I'm not going to introduce myself any further. If you want to know more about me, please go on to the first video in the speaking course that should also be on this website. Now, in this class today, we're going to start by looking at the first task in the writing, task 1. Today, we're going to be looking at some general key tips and start looking at our introductions. Okay, so let's get started. Key tips. Some of these you should know. 150 words. Fairly simple thing. A lot of people will go, well, yeah, I know that. But a lot of people don't manage to write it. Probably the first thing you want to make sure is you just have to write the minimum word count. If you go below that, you're losing marks not only for writing too few words for the word count, but your grammar, your vocabulary are also going to fall because you haven't written enough different kinds of vocabulary and grammar. Okay, so just try your very best, even if you add a paragraph at the end that you're not sure about. 20 minutes at most. A lot of people say this advice, but you should probably write task 2 first because it's worth a lot more. It's 250 words or more compared to 150 words. So I think it's basically marked that 60% of the mark comes from task 2 and only 40% of the mark comes from task 1. So generally the advice here that many teachers and books will say is that if you are going to run out of time and not finish one of the tasks, it's much better that you don't finish task 1. Actually, no, it's much better you finish them both. But if you can't finish them both, it's better that you finish task 2 than task 1 because it is worth more marks. Now, within that 20-minute period, generally I would suggest you're only going to spend 12 minutes or so actually writing, 12 or 13 minutes. The first 3 minutes or 4 minutes should be in studying the question, and then you should have 2 or 3 minutes at the end to review your grammar, your vocabulary, and make sure you have covered everything. Okay, so that's approximate timing you should be using during that 20 minutes. Another very important thing about task 1 writing is that you do not give opinions. It is testing your scientific writing. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So task 1 is about testing scientific writing. Task 2 is for non-science majors, business, language, these history majors. Task 1 is testing physics, math, science majors. So basically, when you're a university student, you're going to be doing some kind of project if you're a science major. You'll go out and collect the data, find out some information, whether that's through quantitative data in terms of just finding out numbers from, say, statistics of a survey people have filled out, or if it's about the results of the test of one kind of chemical on a living piece of tissue in a biology majors class. And you're going to collect thousands and thousands of pieces of data over the course of maybe 6 months of research. You need to collect that data, put it into your computer, create a table, and then write a report to your university professor on that data. Okay, and that's what task 1 is testing. Do you have the skill to do that? I think a lot of books don't really emphasize this very much. I think a lot of teachers don't get that. I think a lot of people don't understand why we have task 1 as part of the IELTS test. So let's have a think about this. Imagine you are testing a new drug or a new medicine that's helping people that have weight problems. And you want to see if this new chemical, this new medicine can help people lose weight. So you maybe test 500 people and you put them into 3 groups, say 600 people. 200 people try medicine A, 200 people try medicine B, and 200 people try medicine C. And you weigh these people, and they use it for 1 year, this medicine. And you collect that data, and you weigh them after 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 12 months. Now, if this was the data you collected here that you can see on the screen there, and you had medicine A, medicine B, and medicine C, your job is then to write a report saying, well, based on this data, we can see a certain result here. If you have a look at this picture, I've made this one so that it will be fairly clear. Medicine B has had the most successful effect on the test subjects on losing weight. You can say that medicine C was also a little bit effective, but medicine A didn't show clear results. So your result, if this was what you were doing, you were researching to find a new medicine to help people lose weight, your main conclusion is going to be, your main idea is like, this is the best medicine. This is working. We can take this and use it in the real world. We'll need to test it more, of course. This would only be probably the first stage in tests as a scientist. You know, you do these basic tests with 600 people. You find out the medicine works, and you keep testing it until you can sell it to people in the shops. Okay, so your first most important thing to report is not your opinion. You don't say why you think this medicine works. You report the data only. Okay, it's scientific writing. So many people don't get that. But I found as a teacher, if you understand that, it actually makes this writing easier. You need to think, what have I been studying as a research student at university? What did I study? What is my result? How will I report that to my professor? Okay, now let's look at a few other things. This is a big thing, mechanical language. Now, this is a word that you'll see in the marking indicators, the marking rubric that you can find online. I'll show it to you a little bit later. So mechanical language, I think actually in our next lesson, we're going to have a look at that rubric. Mechanical language is repetitive. The weight of people for drug A went up, then it went down, then it went up. For medicine B, from this month to this month, the weight went from this down to this. Okay, so it's very repetitive, and it's just numbers. So it went from this number to this number, then it went down from this number to this number, then it stayed steady at this number. If that's all you're doing, it's mechanical language. And generally it means you're just reporting one thing, like you're following that one line there. So what many people do is use lots and lots of mechanical language. They write their entire task one using boring mechanical language. Now, when you are reporting things, what you don't want to be doing is just reporting one thing. You want to report the main features. I'm not going to talk a lot about that today. We're going to focus on that in our next video. But basically, the main features are that key information. So from the graph I showed you before, the main feature there is that drug B was much more effective than the other two drugs, and that drug A did not show any clear results. These kind of things are the main features before you start reporting those numbers and those repetitive mechanical sentences. Okay, so we're going to look at that more in our next video. After you've reported the main features, then you're going to start looking at other little details. Okay, so let's go back and have a quick look. So again, this one here, we might say that all three groups started at a very similar weight after 3 months, and that for the next 3 months, B and C medicines had almost identical amount of weight loss, going from both of them dropping by 1 kilogram on average. However, after that, medicine B started to have a stronger effect, losing 3 kilos and then another 3 kilograms over the next 2 periods, whereas medicine C just decreased by a small amount. So things like this. would be the details you then add. Okay, so that's the kind of two things. When you do write something, try and always compare it to another thing. Don't write about one thing by itself. Okay, again, that's something a lot of people do. They'll just report this medicine A at this time. They'll write a whole paragraph about medicine A with no comparisons to medicine B and C. That's not what we want. We want to see how they compare to each other. We want to look for patterns and trends. You know? So again, we'll look at that more in the future. If you're not sure, don't worry. We'll come back and analyze main features a lot in our next few videos. Okay, so always try to compare things. In terms of your mark, so for task 1, we are marking TA, which is task achievement. Basically, have you properly reported this data? Have you achieved the report that you would give your professor at university? And again, we're going to look at a little bit about that when we look in our next video at main features, because that's where we find the language about that kind of thing. CC is coherence and cohesion. Coherent means, is it clear to understand? Does the reader understand what you are trying to say? So generally, if you have grammar and vocabulary problems, you will lose coherence. If you put things out of order, you can lose coherence. Cohesion is about, does it stick together? Does it go together well? So this is about the organization of paragraphs and using language that tells the reader clearly what is being said in this paragraph, what is being said in this paragraph. So that's things like signposting language. If you've watched my speaking videos, we've talked about signposting language in part 2 of the speaking. And in our next video, we're going to look at main features and signposting language for task 1 writing and the kind of language we will be using there. Grammar and lexical range are basically the same kind of things. Range and accuracy. So lexical, if you do not know, means vocabulary, the words you are using, and of course grammar. So are you using lots of different grammar structures? And are you using a wide range of vocabulary? That's the first side of it. And it's probably equally important with accuracy. Is it correct grammar? And are you using the appropriate vocabulary, the right vocabulary to use in this situation? Okay, so for example, I could say that this is a coffee drinking receptacle. Receptacle is another word for container. It holds something. However, to use the word receptacle to describe this in day-to-day conversation is wrong. It's a cup. We actually call these a keep cup. You go to the cafe, you take your own cup, saving the environment from all of those paper cups that get thrown away. And in Australia, the cafe I go to, the coffee will be 30 cents cheaper if you use a keep cup. To say receptacle would not be correct vocabulary. Cup is the word to use there. So a lot of students with lexical range make the mistake of using big words that are not right to use. Okay, so for grammar and vocabulary, you want to have a good range and not make too many mistakes. When you are doing the word count, as I mentioned earlier, of course, you don't want to go below the word count. A lot of people don't realize this, but essentially if you're below 150 words, you lose 1 mark. I think it's 110 words, you lose 2 marks. Below 70 words, you lose 3 marks. Now, if you've written below 70 words, you're getting like a 3. You're getting a very, very low score. There's a little thing that most people don't know. That 150, it's not 150. It's actually 141. If you have a few words below 150, they're not going to take a mark off you. They're going to be a little bit nice to you. But anything below 141, they're going to be definitely taking that mark off you. So if you've written 148, they're not going to punish you for that. Okay, so let's move on.